Kevin, Grace, I've got a story to tell you both.
Go on.
A number of years ago, I, myself, and a couple of pals decided to row the Atlantic Ocean. A couple of years in, we decided it wasn't going very well. And we totally ran out of resources, and we found ourselves lost in the middle of the ocean. Water everywhere as far as the eye could see. I was suddenly staggered because bobbing into view came 4 pristine windows and doors. And I thought, wow, where on earth did they come from? So I leaned over, I plucked the business card out of the extremely high quality and affordable window pane, and the card said, Graham's Windows and Doors.
You could have used one for the bottom of the boat so you could have seen the fish you were trying to catch.
Yeah,
Kev, everyone around me was dead. I had no time to
So
think.
you're eating your friends.
We had loads of food. I just decided
I'm not
that's
sure
something about
Graham's
in my
Windows
life.
and Doors want
You
to be
mod a
associated
version
with
of the-
cannibalism.
Titanic, flight them off in the
Yes.
in the
Yeah,
doors.
that's right.
Only
Get
space
off
for
road.
one.
There's plenty of room for 2 on Graham's Windows and Doors.
Yeah, it was carnage there. But luckily the window came along and saved us in ways I couldn't possibly go into right now, but it spared us. So Graham's Windows and Doors. The card said Graham's Windows and Doors. Graham'sWindowsandDoors.co.uk is the sponsor of this show. Thank you, James. Thank you, Sherelle. You are wonderful partners in this endeavour. Graham's Windows and Doors are Yeovil's finest purveyor of windows, doors, conservatories, all those things, all the things you could possibly want. So get yourself to Graham'sWindowsandDoors.co.uk and we'll talk about them a little bit more at the end of the show.
Hiya, you're right. Hi, everyone.
Hello and welcome to the Steve Kalish Show. I'm Steve Kalish and I'm joined as usual by the 21st century's greatest Lothario, a wordsmith, my twisted reflection, Kevin Harris.
Thank
Kevin,
you, I think.
Yes, yeah. How you doing, mate? Everyone okay?
Yeah,
You happy?
good, yeah.
Yeah, you're looking really good. You're looking really good. Your skin's looking better. You've slimmed right down. You're magnificent.
Skinny
specimen.
wafer thin thing.
Yeah, you're getting it, mate. You look lovely. And we're also joined by Grace Pybus. Grace, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, hey,
Thanks.
wait.
Brave in the weather.
Yes, yeah. Might be the most extraordinary thing you've ever done,
Yeah.
Brave in this weather. And so Grace is here
Difficult
because
thing to do this month.
Grace is here because we've got because she's got an incredible story to tell us. But before that, I just want to have a little bit of a catch up. Let's jump straight into a section I like to call "What Have We Learned This Week."
What have we learned this week? Learning stuff is cool.
Kevin, have you learned anything this week?
Sadly, yes.
Oh.
I've learned about diabetes, type 2, and other such boring things.
What have we learned about diabetes type?
Don't
How many?
get it.
How many? Okay.
Because then you have to learn about it.
Sure. Yeah. And what? How many types are there of diabetes? Do we
As
know?
far as I know, 2.
Oh, so you got the? Is that the big one you got, or is it? No, one is
the
the
one is the one
is
that they used to call juvenile. That children
Yeah,
get.
I worked at Juvenile Diabetes Research Foundation, and that's usually found in kids.
Yeah.
Did you really
type
work at a
1.
juvenile?
Yeah.
Did you really? Did
in
you know that?
research.
No, I did
Did you
not.
promote? You're the perfect guest for everything. You teed
I'm
that
not
up
trying to
and
like commandeer your story, but I was like,
no,
yeah, no, I
you
get
teed
it.
that up and you knocked it out of the park.
One is usually when your
This is
pancreas is
podcasting.
like packed in
It doesn't
at
work
an early
at all.
age, and then type 2 is usually when it comes at a later age in life, so like past about 12, 13, 14. Yeah. But no, carry on.
That's what podcasting is, ladies and gentlemen. We're learning stuff. So what else did you learn about diabetes? Bear in mind, I'm going to get it verified as soon as you tell me. So.
Yeah, other than don't get it, it's just not fun.
No.
No. It's made me thin.
Oh, so are you opening up now about the fact that you open about the fact that
Yeah,
you have
yeah.
it now? Okay,
Yeah.
cool. I thought yeah.
There's a small part of me missing, literally like 3 stone of it, so it's kind of obvious.
So yeah, you've lost 3 stone in weight. So essentially, you got they confirmed you had diabetes, and then you had to go on a strict regime. Is that right? Yeah. And
Because
how's that been?
It turns out my blood is mostly just syrup
Oh,
of
delicious.
some description.
That's
I'm sure it
pretty
is.
tasty.
I'd be a vampire's favourite.
Yeah. So, but that's what you've learned about diabetes this week, and maybe next week then we can go into more detail about it and we can explore it a little bit more because I'd be
Yeah, if
interested
you
to
want
learn
to.
some more about it. Yeah, it's very good.
I mean, we're all approaching the age now where we should be panicking.
Yeah, especially with the amount of Kit Kats I inhale every
Have a
day.
Kit
Do you know
Kat.
what the annoying
Yeah.
thing is? And it is when you start learning about the food, you know it's bad. You all know it's bad.
Yeah, you don't want to see it on the paper. You're like, I
No.
know.
But when you actually look and you're like, Oh shit! I ate 3 of them,
Mm.
like without even batting an eyelid after dinner.
Me and
Yeah.
And
Misha.
dessert.
For a little treat.
Yeah.
Snack.
Just like, oh, I'm just doing this. I'll just smash these in my face.
Me and Misha will often watch Grey's Anatomy and eat an entire Ben and Jerry's thing each. You know what I mean, and then
I'm so here for that.
yeah, it's
Mhm.
good stuff.
Yeah.
it's
It's
good
the
stuff.
best.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
good stuff. Grace, have you learned anything this week?
So a little bit about because obviously we had the Northern Lights over pretty much the whole of the UK.
I was too lazy to stay awake for that.
I was at an awards event, so I didn't look up once, and I got in before the sun came up, and anyway fell asleep. But I found out about the KP scales, which is the gradients that they measure the Northern Lights on. So basically, Northern Lights are produced by sort of solar flares off of the sun, and depending on the gradient of the scale is depending on where you see it in Europe or
I see.
South as well. So I think it hit about a KP7, which means it could be seen all over sort of UK and Northern
Wow.
Europe, which is
Yeah,
pretty
yeah.
cool.
Yeah, that is really cool.
Yeah.
I was in here. I didn't know that
I
the.
told my partner, I was like, seriously, because she's always wanted to see it. I was like, 10 o'clock tonight. So we ran out of the house, went through 2 houses because there's an open area, and we stood there.
How
That's
depressing.
north.
Yeah. Well, I was
And then
fixing
woke
a CD
pictures
player.
of everyone going, oh, look, I saw it last
Yeah, I
night."
know. The sky was exploding around us.
Common misconception though is they're grey. They're not sort of green and pink because, well, depends where you are in the world. If they're like super intense, then they can be, but it's usually sort of the aperture on the camera that turns them green. So a lot of people are expecting the sky to light up, and it
I
doesn't.
reckon I'd be depressed if I saw them and they were grey because do you know that
Like,
syndrome?
am I colourblind?
Yeah, do you know that syndrome where this, people from Asian countries, often Japan or China, they'll go to Paris and then they get very ill because all of a sudden it's a real phenomenon where Paris isn't what they expected in movies because it's
Romanticised.
I was going to say
Oh, yeah.
I don't like Paris. I was going to say something mean about it, but yeah, Paris is so romanticised that some people from far-flung countries come to visit it, and then actually you get very depressed because it's not what they pictured in their mind's eye.
It's a big metal tower.
And I reckon I would feel like the universe is coming after me if someone said, "Look, the Northern Lights," and the sky was sort of spewing grey. I'd say,
Just
"Oh,
like,
that's
oh,
underwhelming." Yeah,
This is all right.
yeah. After all the lovely pictures
But
that I've
everyone's
seen,
pictures look great.
yeah, it
Yeah.
did. Yeah, very, very good. Well, listen. The main thing that we want to learn about is your story, Grace.
Okay.
So-
What do you want to know?
Well, so tell me first about you and what you did. Let's summarize it, and then we can break it wide open.
Okay, so a couple of years back, it's actually during the lockdown, I was scrolling Instagram and I saw this amazing woman rowing across the Atlantic, and I thought, oh, that's completely, it's one of those things you see it and you're like, that's an unobtainable goal, because the money that it costs and the training, the preparation, the admin was so heavy that I was like, I'll never get there. And ended up connecting with a couple of girls that I thought, you know what, they're legends, got on like a house on fire. And over the sort of a period of about 2 years, we built the steps to be able to row the Atlantic Ocean, which is 3,000 nautical miles from La Gomera in the Canary Islands all the way over to sunny Antigua. So that was my kind of last 2 years, basically.
We can't even get ourselves together to go down Cooper's Mill for a beer.
I almost drowned in the bath. I slipped.
Almost drowned in a
I
field.
slipped in the. Yeah, I did. Yeah, I'm always almost drowning in things. Wow, that's really impressive.
Yeah,
That's
thank
right.
you.
So I want to know.
How do you meet likewise? Like, how do you just bump into people and go, I want to do that?
Yeah, because there's got to be people that are also passionate, but it's not. Yeah, they also
To convince someone, because you obviously were slightly put off by the admin,
Yeah.
to have enough people that were probably all put off the admin and go, we can.
You've
do
got to
this
find
together.
someone who's incredible at admin.
So how did you find your girls? And, yeah.
You
So-
can row you on a computer for the rest of the week.
So more or less, actually. So I my background is boats. So I've worked on super yachts, speedboats, flotillas. I'm boaty. My nickname is Boaty McBoat Grace. So yeah, so
Yeah.
so I knew a guy down sort of Cardiff Bay who has rowed the Atlantic quite a few times, and he put me in touch with a girl called Maddie, who's from Bristol. Well, she lives in Bath, but we got chatting about it, and she had just come back from paddleboarding down the Amazon, and I'd just come back from doing Everest Base Camp. So we were kind of like,
Hey, look how cool we are.
yeah, I was like,
Hey, you're
look
cool.
at us.
Hey, you're cool.
Oh my God. And we knew we didn't want to do it as like a small team, because the most sort of successful teams were like 3s and 4s and 5s. But that's not taken away from like the solos and the pairs that do it, because it's so much harder as like an individual. And we actually contacted the World's Toughest Row race organisers and said, look, have you got any women that are like well up for something insane. So we got sent a list, and at the top of the list was a lady called Grace Gilbert, who is a decorated triathlete. She's incredible. So we set up a little FaceTime with her, and immediately we were like, yeah, she's the one. So we all met up in Bath sort of a couple days before Christmas and just got seshed on wine and cheese and was like,
Sweet.
it's happening. So we were really lucky. We trained with one of the top like sort of ocean rowing coaches, a guy called Duncan Roy. And we went out in the North Sea for about sort of 2 days and gave it a good go and thought, you know what, let's see if we can do this for like 30 to 50 days.
Wow.
Yeah, and we had there's a lot of standards that you have to meet to be able to do this row, because not many people sort of sign up to do it. And when they do, the admin is so heavy that a lot of people drop out sort of like a year before. So you have to have like a strong team and the momentum to do it, which luckily we did.
You glossed over it just ever so slightly there. But you said about the training. Now, I remember watching, what's his face? Whoever they were doing the Olympic stuff. And every time it came round, every year, they'd be like, this is what we do, you know, the Boxing Day and so and so.
Yeah.
And that's to go up and down a mill pond. So what did it take for you and the rest of you guys to...
So...
What training did you do? Frequency, etc.?
There's a lot of time spent on rowing machines, which is my least favourite piece of equipment in the gym. I hate it so much. And even now to this day, every time I see it, I'm like, get
Hear
away
a
from
fan
me.
in the background.
It's just like... But so there's a lot of strength and conditioning. Everybody thinks you need to be like this incredible athlete and kind of like peak like physical performance, but you don't. And I know that sounds really bad. You do have to meet a standard of being fit and healthy because you have to pass medicals and things like that, and do sort of like sea survival courses. But a lot of it is ocean-based training. So we were based out of Portland. And we had our boat down there, and you have to do a minimum of 127 hours on the water, of which about 30% are night hours, and one of them has to be 50 plus hours continuous. So you have to track this so the race organisers can see that you're going out in different conditions, that you can kind of, cope with the weather, cope with seasickness if you get it, and 3, that's a really good opportunity to figure out if the team that you're with are the right team, because you can't escape each other. It's like
I was going to ask that later on. Yeah, I was going to ask, because that's I reckon sometimes just sitting with one of my co-hosts for 20 or 25 minutes pushes me to my murderous limit.
Do you reckon?
Yeah. Christ, no, we wouldn't survive. One would eat the other probably after 48 days. But yeah, we've got plenty of food, but we're just cannibalized anyway, just out of rage. But yeah, I was going to ask about it later on, because that must have been, there's numerous things as I was considering your story earlier where I thought, oh no, I wouldn't do that bit even, let alone the
From
entire...
my aspect of it is like you said, I'm not saying that rowing isn't difficult, because it is, but you're not rowing for speed, you're rowing for distance.
Endurance, yeah.
So a lot of speed is power. It's over and done with.
Yeah.
There is nothing over and done with about endurance. It's just hell on earth, and it keeps going. So how
until it's done. That's endurance.
And it's never done.
Never.
How do you mentally prepare? 'Cause like you said, you're stuck with 3 people. You might not be getting on with each other that day. Whatever's going on physically with burns, chafing, whatever it is. How do you get around that mentally? Because that's the bit for me.
Honestly, I feel incredibly lucky, because the girls I did it with, like, we had an absolute blast, and we're really lucky that we got on. Like, there were times, obviously, where you just kind of like can irritate each other, but it was like being on a boat with 2 sisters, because you can be like, oh, you've annoyed me, you've done this, and then they're like, get over it, and you're like, yeah, all right, fine,
As you
cool.
communicate well enough there.
Yeah.
I'm just going for a walk.
Yeah, you can communicate enough to be like, you can be like, that was annoying, please don't do it again, and you're like, I apologise.
Okay, that's good.
Even if in your head you're like, I don't apologise, you're like, I do apologise. Yeah, literally, you're like, I'll do it for the team.
No, but that makes sense. So you have to learn some healthy communication and each other's boundaries and that sort of thing.
But
I think that's why men can't do it.
Yeah, well, I hold on to things for years at a time and slowly phase people out.
Well, one of the things we did is we wrote a team contract of standards and expectations of each other, and we wrote different things of what we expected from each other. Yeah, more or less like a kind of like a rowing marriage, like certificate. I don't know. Where we kind of said, the number one rule was safety. Like, we would never jeopardize each other's safety. That was a number one priority. So even if it meant like, if you're so tired and it's like 4 a.m. and then the next person comes on for shift, you shout out before you say anything, like, are you clipped on? Because that years ago, a gentleman didn't clip on, a wave hit the boat, and he just was lost at sea. So you're always clipped on for 3 different points. So like before you even say like, how's your sleep? How's this? You're like, are you clipped on? And they're like, yes. And I'm like, hi. But I'd say like in terms of sort of being mentally strong for it, you do put all of that into the people that you're rowing with, because there's days where you will be like flying high 100% and there'll be another person on the team that's completely broken. And it's having the vulnerability to say to someone like, today is going to be a very bad day. And the others just go, do you know what? Yeah, that's fine. Like you do you, hun. Like when you're better, just let us know. But yeah, I'd say you can't really prepare for it, because the first 2 weeks of the row was the worst weather that they've ever had.
So what you've done is you've rowed 3,000 nautical miles in this very same ocean that claimed such cool guys as the Titanic. Yeah. And it's just
Jack
this.
Dawson.
Yeah, it's this. I picture the.
Wilson,
that's right.
No, that was not the Atlantic. He's probably there though.
Wilson says some,
Wilson.
That's him. And the Atlantic Ocean is a terrifying thing in many ways, because it's a 180 million year old titan that sits there waiting to claim your life, and you and these other ladies are like, well, we should probably row that thing.
Yeah,
and
let's do it.
And I just think that's
incredibly incremental weather. So it's like fun.
In a tiny little boat.
So I just think in a tiny little boat, and I just think it's so impressive. So take us to the first day.
So we were in La Gomera for 2 weeks prior, doing build-up, final checks, final confirmation rows to make sure that we were like good to go. Like there was one team that quit at La Gomera and left, and I was like, oh, why would you do that? You've got so close, and you've just gone, I'm out. So day one, all your family, all the family's friends, all of the people from La Gomera are like on the pontoons, and there's about 20-second time differences between each team, so they'll push you off and they'll be like, bye, on to the next team. We were a trio, so we were kind of in the middle. So you're in your seat, you're ready to go. I'm looking up at my mum and dad who've like flown over from the UK, and I was just like, all right, see you later then. And off, like they just push you off. But my first stroke in the water, I didn't realise, but somebody had been on to do final checks on our chair, but they clipped my chair in. So I did a full stroke and I almost went full send backwards in front of hundreds of people. And I'm like, there's cameras everywhere. So I'm like, girls, my chair's stuck. And they're like, just do what you can. And I'm like, I can't row. So I'm like, if you look at the video, like the arms are doing it, but the body's like, I bet everyone was like, well, she didn't do her training.
Not going to get very far, is she?
Yeah, she's not even got out of the marina. So that was like the first sort of like 10 minutes.
Sure.
You row out, and the day that we left, it was really foggy. So there's like a huge volcano on Tenerife in the distance that just disappeared. And then this whale boat like came next to us and was like, have a great row. And it was getting so close to us that I was like, if you hit your boat with our boat and like write us off before we've even left, I'm going to cry. So we rowed for about, we did 2 hours on, 1 hour off for the first sort of 24 hours. And within the first sort of 24 hours, we were joined by some minke whales, which is really cool. Really scary, because I was like, please don't jump on a boat. And we hired a weather router, so a man on the ground that would call us every day and be like, look, you've got this weather coming in. And that it was accurate to an extent, but because you can't get accurate data, he's just going off what you can see off windy.com, which gives you sort of like tide, waves, things like that. And he'd be like, you're going to get about 2 to 5 meter waves. They were like 20 meters.
Oh, no.
It was... I can't even explain. So our first sort of 24 hours, like 3 or 4 teams capsized because it was so bad. And these boats are designed, if you capsize, it pulls you around. But if you are on deck, you obviously just get dragged round in like a washing machine.
Do you know that they've capsized whilst you're in your boat? Did someone go, oh, God, these guys are capsized?
Our weather router was like, he was pretty hot on it. He was like, listen up, right? You're beating these guys because they've capsized. And you're like, that's really unfortunate. You hope that the whole team is safe. But you're like, but we are ahead.
Oh, so, but I meant like, I meant like, did it make you scared? Apparently it turned you more competitive.
Yes,
well, obviously.
But I thought you go, oh shit, people are dropping like flies.
I think everybody is scared of the capsize because it happens. It didn't happen that often in the race, but this year was so horrific. Like, our friends, the wave breakers who set the world record this year, they capsized and they said it was so horrific. We had a half capsize, which was honestly disgusting. So it was me and Grace on deck. Maddie had just gone in for a rest, so she'd locked herself in the cabin. And I'm rowing with Grace, and I think we're like listening to Harry Potter.
Sweet.
And you've got these huge waves coming at you. But every now and then you get a freak beam on wave, so it would like come from either side. And I remember Grace being like, oh shit. And there was this huge wave, and you know when like a wave breaks and you get the white water, it just dumped on our head. And I remember watching Grace go sideways, and I was like, okay, it's go time. So you drop the oars immediately because they flail around, and these oars are like huge. They're about 3 meters in length either side. And I remember thinking like, right, hold your breath and just like hold on. And I remember getting absolutely thrown about 180 degrees. And then it's snapping back really hard the other way, and just like having all this water sort of like fall off the deck. And I remember Grace was on the deck in front of me, like, she's like looking behind me like, are you okay? And I'm like, I'm fine, are you okay? And then Maddie opens the door and she's like, oh my God, my face was on the nav station. Are you girls okay? Like, she's like been thrown around like in a washing machine. And then we look to our left, and one of the oars is like this, and they usually sit like this. And I looked and I was like, oh, I don't know and I tried to like pull the oar out, and it had just clean snapped. We managed to get the oar out, and it's actually an oar that was sponsored by Preston School in Yeovil, so it's now displayed in the sports hall, which is really cool.
Wow, that's
but
really
we
cool.
also broke some of our gates, which meant we lost a rowing position, so we couldn't row as a 3. We had to row as a 2.
Yeah.
So that was like our first kind of 24 hours, and I was like, okay, we're in this. We're in this. Okay, it's happening. And when we spoke to the weather route, I was like, so you know there's like 5-meter waves? Inaccurate.
You're fired.
Yeah, I was like, you're done.
One thing we haven't done is set out for anyone listening, as you described said boat. Please describe the boat.
Oh, so they're Rannoch R45 Elite. So there's 2 companies in the UK that really make ocean rowing boats. There's Rossiter, but they're kind of like older, chunkier. They're designed for like Indian Ocean, like big voyages. And then Rannoch, who are based in Essex, they design ocean rowing boats. So they're about 19 foot, so they're not big. They're quite long and thin. They're probably actually about the width of this table. And they have been designed in such a way that if you flood any of your apartments or anything like that, it can row with up to about 7 of them flooded. So they're like really durable boats. There's a bow cabin, which we called the penthouse suite, because it was long enough just for me, and I'm about 6 foot, but it was sweaty and hot, and like everything was damp and moist. And it was kind of like, would you rather like lay on deck and get absolutely battered by a wave, or be like in a sweatbox? But then in the stern was what we refer to as the coffin, because you had to step in backwards whilst taking on the waves, and then tuck your feet under the boat and like lay with your legs like a starfish. So then just this part of your body is like by the navigation station and like the tiller. And that was the worst, because if you slept in there, you were literally next to the auto helm that was just like the noisiest thing. So after about like 2 or 3 weeks, so you get used to it, because you're so tired. You just are like, night.
Grace, why on earth did you do this? This sounds very uncomfortable.
Well, the training that we did in Portland was like really lovely, and I was not expecting to just almost get capsized.
So let's paint just for the listener. Let's paint capsized. This is scary. Let's paint a picture for the listener. So, you, Grace, Maddie.
Yep.
So you, Grace, and Maddie, you set off in this boat you just described.
She was called Audrey. We loved her.
Oh, that's it. Yeah, I had Maureen in my head for some reason. Audrey.
Audrey. It's an old lady name.
Maureen's
We
her
love
sister.
her.
Yeah. So you set off in Audrey. The first 24 hours are turbulent and hectic.
Yeah.
So what stands out then as the next few weeks sort of unfold? What stands out? Like, how are you mentally handling it? How's the boat handling it? What span the next few weeks of the adventure for us? So
the bad weather continued, honestly, for about 2 weeks, and you were just absolutely wrecked at the end of the 2 week. You'd be like on the phone to the weather, you're like, when is this ending? You'd be like, just a few more days. And then eventually it did calm down, and then we got hit with like no weather, which is worse than big weather, because it's like rowing through treacle. But we had something. Oh, because the water's still there's no wind, and it's just sunshine on you, and it's like, it's honestly like rowing through concrete, and you're like, okay, give me the waves back. Like, I want the capsize. Like, it was that kind of sort of vibe. But we always did something called Fun Day Friday, which was we all surprised each other with something. So in sort of the first 2 weeks, we had the world's most remote cocktail party, which is currently being verified by the Guinness Book of Records.
Ooh.
So if you're listening, Guinness, represent.
Get on it, yeah.
And we had quite a few alcohol sponsors, which was lovely. So we actually got seshed halfway across, and the race organisers are like, "You guys are liabilities."
Alcohol and
I mean, like,
cross-Atlantic rowing.
But I can swim it.
Go
but I
hand
can
in
swim
hand.
it, yeah.
I was like, that capsize wasn't real. I was just drunk. But it was, so we did that. We've had like full moon parties. We had a fake hen do for me, even though I'm not like getting married yet. They were like, it's happening, top bands. Had New Year's Eve. We had Christmas Day on the water. There were lots of little things to look forward to. But the thing that I set up that I loved was every 300 miles, I had a letter from home or someone that had posted me something. So although it did actually act as a hindrance on my first letter, because I was like, oh my God, everything hurts. And it was a letter from my dad. And I read it and I just sobbed. And my friends were like, are you okay? And I was like, yes, I'm just emotional. But then there was letters that just absolutely made me crease. So it's like, it's all relative. Like you have to have things in place to kind of go, do you know what, that's my milestone. So like my biggest treat was a family-sized popcorn of sweet and salted like goodness. And that actually made it on to BBC News. I know, it's kind of linked into like another part of the row, but...
So you're a few weeks in, and you said the strain is eased a little bit because you set yourself very sensible milestones along the way, things to cough for no reason, things to look forward to. So then let's keep going. So how long overall were you on the water for?
48 days.
Jesus Christ.
48 days, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So take us to that halfway point. How are you coping? And did you feel like, because that must start to feel, well, we're doing it now, we've committed.
So on the nav station, you can see exactly where halfway is. And it's kind of like, you just feel like you're not moving. You're kind of like, right, every day we'd get an update from our weather route being like, okay, you've done 86 miles today, like epic. As soon in your head, you're like, yeah, if we do this and we're going to hit there on this time and blah, blah, blah. But the days where it was no weather, I remember he messaged us one morning. We get like really hyped up on the sat phone rings and we're like, right, we got the message. And I was like, girls, we've done 12 miles. And everyone was like, what? I was like, yeah, we've done 12 miles. And everyone was fuming. Inside I was fuming, but I was like, girls, it's great. It's still 12 miles. I was like, I could have swum 12 miles, like floated 12 miles. But that's 24 hours. So I was like doing the maths in my head and I was like, going to get there in May. Like, we're not going to get there. So just before the halfway, we were 8th in a race of 38 boats. And I'm talking, you've got like 5 men teams from the Royal Navy. You've got like ex-military guys. You've got Navy SEALs doing it. And we were a trio. And all the teams ahead of us, bar one trio, were 4s and 5s. So we were like, do you know what? We're like smashing it. We're getting all these messages from home being like, oh, girls. Even I was like, I don't know what's happened here. But cool. If we were being told, we're on for a world record. Like, you're going to set the world record. Like, you're going to beat the guys from last year. And I was just like, this is amazing. And it was New Year's Eve. And we were all sunbathing because we were like, do you know what? It's New Year's Eve. We've had Christmas. Christmas was great. Let's just like, we're not really making much headway. So let's just have a nice day. Like, let's see how far we do. So we're rowing along. I was on my off shift. So I was in the middle, like catching some sun. I say catching some sun. I was like factor 100 all over me. And Maddie's rowing and she goes, oh, girls, I think there's something in the water. And Grace was like, yeah, it's probably a wave, Maddie. Because, like, Maddie's very, like, she's brilliant. She's very receptive to everything. And Grace is, like, very blunt, straight to the point. And Maddie was like, no, there's something massive in the water. And I was just like, girls, let's not do the Jaws thing. Like, we're on a little boat. Like, ha, ha, ha. And honestly, I was laying flat. And I looked to my right and this massive blue, like neon blue fin popped up. And I was like, oh my God, what is that? Because I'd never seen anything like that. And Maddie was like, is it a shark? I was like, I don't know what it is. Like, sharks don't have neon blue fins. And I looked over the side of the boat and underneath the boat was like this 10-foot shadow. It was huge. And I was like, I think I might die today. well, this isn't great. And then this big tail popped up and we realised it was a blue marlin. And we'd only ever heard about blue marlins as like these mythical, like if you see them, they're going to wreck your boat. So I was just like, oh my God, we've rented this boat for an amazing team that are doing it this year. And I was like, why is it here? Like, what does it want? And we realised that there was a shoal of tuna under our boat. But because we are the only sort of protective object for these fish to shield from, we're like, oh my God, this marlin is hunting these tuna under our boat. And it was thrashing on the side of the boat. And it was like hitting the side of the boat, doing circles. And you could see it like swimming away and then coming back. And you could see like how long its bill was. And we'd seen marlin attacks before, but they would kind of like maybe put like a little bit of a hole in the boat and then it would snap off its bill so that the hole is plugged. So you're like, okay, it's like inconvenient at best. So anyway, I was like, girls, we need to get rowing here. But because it was kind of flat, calm, no weather, I was like, even if we put full watts down, it was like 0.5 nautical miles. I was like, we can't get away from a marlin. It's like the second fastest thing in the ocean. And Grace was like, I'm going to get my GoPro out. I was like, now's not the time for that. Like, get rowing, let's go. And she's like, no, let's film it, see what's happening. So she put her arm in, she took it out and she watched it. And this marlin is huge. Its tail is kind of like longer than the rudder was.
Was it shark or whale or dolphin or what is it? What is a marlin?
Marlin is like
the fastest fish in the ocean.
Just big
the most
fish.
aggressive fish in the
Sailfish.
ocean as well. Like it's kind of so like a sailfish has got like the nice kind of like fluffy headpiece, whereas the marlin has the more aggressive kind of headpiece.
They're like the best sport fish you can go after.
Like so you can kind of hunt them in Florida.
Right.
Like, I don't know what kind of reference that gives, but like they're also in the Atlantic.
Yeah.
Well, they're the size of a small looking dinosaur.
Yeah, they're huge.
Oh. So you knew about them going in because their marlin attacks
but we
are
were told
scary
they're so rare. It's highly unlikely that you'll see a blue one. I was like,
he's fired. He's fired. The weather guy's fired. He's
safety team fired. So we were like, oh God. And then Grace was like, do you know what? Right, I'm just going to take one more bit of footage, and she captures it. And this is kind of what made Global News. Basically, this fish, I say fish, like torpedo, swam off and then came back, and it didn't just put its bill through the boat; it put its entire face through the boat. It smashed through 3 of our compartments. Like the thickness from the outside to where Grace is sat is probably about that. It speared through Maddie's snack pack hatch, so all of her snacks were absolutely ruined. She was fuming. Yeah, she's like, Marlin, I hate you.
Marlins, they're like,
and then
Marlin,
it went through where our para anchor was, which is kind of like if you're in stormy weather, you can put out a massive parachute in the water. Went straight through that, and it knocked Grace off of her metal framed seat. Like that's how powerful it was. And rather than leave its bill in, it swam off into the distance and after ruining our lives. And we were left with 3 holes. One of them I could put my leg through. Not that I did. I was just like, woo! And you are given a kit list of things that you need to bring. And one of them is like bungs and plugs and like Sikaflex, which is basically like hole filling things. But the biggest bung we had was like this. We like pushed it and it was just like floats off. It was. We ended up having to fill it with an inflatable fender that we had on our boat at the start of the race and a champagne bottle. And this got so much world press. Like we were all over the Daily Mail, BBC News, like we made news in Australia. And it was it was the most hectic, chaotic thing that we've ever had to deal with. And I can now officially say I hate marlins.
Yeah.
Understandably.
They're on the menu anywhere. I'm going to eat them out of spite.
Yeah.
They taste good.
Well, so how did you feel? How scared were you when that was happening?
On the video, you can actually, when it hits the boat, you can hear Grace being like, right, all joking aside, it has hit the boat. And I'm like, what's happened? I think you kind of go into kind of flight or fight mode, and we'd been drilled on different areas of the boat, like our sort of medical kit and our repairs kit. And it was just like, everybody kind of fell into place and knew their place. So we notified World Toughest Row and we were like, look, we've been absolutely torpedoed.
We've been marlined.
Yeah, we've been marlined. And they were really good. They were like, okay, these are the steps you need to take. And we were like, no bungers filling this. So we're just going to freestyle it here. He's like, can you get in the water and like patch it up from the outside. I was like, no, because there's still a marlin around.
Yeah.
We're not getting in. So I rowed for 5 hours while the girls fixed these holes, because it's like you still have to maintain course.
Yeah.
And it was kind of, it was.
Are you
I've got
showing
a
me the
picture.
marlin? Good Lord.
To give you an idea of what the other pictures are.
Yeah.
They're not in the water for most of them.
Yeah, I hate them.
Jesus.
They do not mess about.
God, it's a sword-nosed
They are
bastard of a thing.
incredibly aggressive.
Massive.
Oh,
But
Jesus.
honestly, in the space of about 24 hours, we went from 8th to 28th because we took on the equivalent of like
course
a
you
20
did.
stone person.
Yeah.
And we couldn't bilge it because, well, we could bilge parts of it, but we had to equalize the water throughout the whole of the boat, which meant flooding 2 different chambers and bilging it. But if you didn't have sun, you couldn't use the bilge. So towards the end of the race, we're like, we're just going to row with it. Like, it went from being like, do you know what, we're racing, to like, we'll just get there when we get there. It's like, sauce fam.
Yeah.
You come out whenever we're done.
Yeah, that's fair.
So
That picture of the marlin was scary
I mean,
enough.
this one alone, so the biggest one ever caught by a human on a rod and reel was 1,402 pounds or 636 kilos.
The impact of it when it hit the boat was...
Even if it was half that size, it's
Move
like a
the boat.
small car hitting you flat out.
It was honestly, it was about 10 foot, genuinely.
Jesus
Like,
That picture's scary enough. Having one try to kill you in the middle of the ocean.
Yeah, that's pretty scary, and it's
Like-
upside down and attached to a hook.
I know, that's my favourite style of marlin.
Yes.
Like,
I once caught a
Dead.
fish this big.
I might actually
Wow.
take up marlin fishing in Florida.
Yeah.
for
Yeah,
fun.
that's a huge thing. That's the ultimate American.
Well, kill them all, I say.
Yeah,
Death
I-
down
100%.
marlin. Death to the marlin. That's what I say.
Well, they
And if-
did. They fished them out of existence on South America for a while. That's why they're so rare.
Well, they didn't
because
do a
they
very
are.
good job.
Yeah, I
The-
met one.
Like the Big Daddy one.
Honestly, about a week before we finished as well, this big wave came up, and we were about 60 miles off Antigua, and I was like, nice. And it through the wave coming towards me, I saw this bluefin pop up, and I literally just went, oh, for fuck's sake. And Maddie was
Yeah.
like, what's wrong? And I was like, there's a marlin. And Grace was like, I'll get the GoPro. I was like, no, put the GoPro down. We need
Stop
to get out of
antagonising
here.
it or making it
It's
famous
like-
for
She's
fuck's
the,
sake.
We had other
she's the fucking
teams-
Steven Spielberg of the sea.
She is. We had other teams call us like, I've got a marlin near me. What do I do? And I'm like, don't let it hit you. Like, I don't know. But we found out apparently
Don't get the GoPro out.
there was a guy who was stalked for about a week by a blue marlin. And every time he got near, he just, on the boat, you have something like a water maker, which basically filters seawater so you can drink it. But it put vibrations through the water. But we were, it was a conflict because some people were like, no, it attracts it. But he was like, I swear by it. Anytime there was a marlin, he just was like, press this button, and this marlin was like, oh, fine, I'll leave. And then it would come back the next day. Yeah.
Oh.
So wish I'd known that.
Almost wish you'd saw a great white, because at least it would have left you alone and just
Yeah.
swam next to you. You'd have been like,
Honestly,
and he could have got a little GoPro out. Everyone would have been happy.
like the damage it caused was £9,000. We were
Are
really
you
lucky.
liable for that? Or was the marlin?
We had insurance, which was incredible, but they were like, we've not really dealt with this before.
How do you explain that? So
It's
what
like, it's
happened?
not, we were
A
like,
fish came through my boat.
yeah, I was like, some insurance companies are like, can you draw what happened? And I'm like, if they had asked us, I would have
I've
been
got
like, right.
GoPros.
Yeah.
But
Wow.
honestly, I just was like, luckily the insurance did cover it. But we also had an incredible sponsor who covered a lot of like our damage repair.
Did she get her snacks back?
No. And then we had to she had to salvage different parts of snacks, but she went like, you have to create 60 snack packs of like goodies that you have to consume. So 2,500 calories extra a day of stuff. You have to eat it. So like I had like Nobby's nuts and like skips and all of the good stuff. But she went like all out and got the, like the Tony's chocolate that's like
Yeah,
£4 a go. She had a lot of that. And she just was like scooping it out like, Tony's. And it was just like, I was like, maybe try it anyway. And we'd ate it all. We were like, sea
Oh,
salt.
sea salt flavour.
Yeah,
Mm.
no thanks. But there was some stuff that was salvageable, but there was some stuff that was just RIP. Like you take off all the packaging and just throw it in the
That's a
ocean.
sad
Like
one,
so bad. But yeah, I hate that marlin. And everywhere I've been since, like I currently live in like the middle of nowhere, kind of like outer West Australia. And everywhere I go, all the pubs there it's like the northern, their brand is like, so their version of like Green King IPA and stuff is like Northern Rock or something, and their motif is a blue marlin. So wherever I go, all these pubs are just like these marlins, and I'm like, I hate them everywhere I go.
Yeah, it's haunting you. Yeah,
Yeah. They would be my Patronus though if I was in Harry Potter. I've decided, just like a really aggressive marlin.
Yeah, that'd be terrifying.
Picture, I'm like,
Wow. So you do really well to, one, survive the island, and two,
Repeatedly.
and then patch the boat back up and regroup and regather.
Yeah.
So how do you get on then? So how far into it was the Marlin attack?
It was New Year's Eve.
Wow.
So that was probably about halfway where it happened.
Yeah.
So it was the best and worst New Year's Eve.
So how did you find then this? So you've been through these sort of perils. It was a rough start. How did you find the sort of second half of the journey? Mentally, how are you doing with it at this point?
So we kind of said, you know what? We got a lot of exposure, like a lot of world press, but that was amazing because it meant our charities got a massive influx of donations. So I did it for Kidney Research Wales because my dad recently had a transplant where my mum gave her kidney to my dad. So it was raising money for the unit that looked after my dad. So they've got like a lot more donations, which has been brilliant. But you kind of, in that situation, you're like, we're not sinking. We're still making headway. Yes, we've dropped to like 28th, but we're still ahead of some of the teams, which is cool, considering we've got like a massive hole in our boat and there's three of us.
Fish ate our boat.
Yeah. So you just kind of go, do you know what? It's happened. Let's just now enjoy it for what it is rather than racing. So we had some really, really special moments, to be fair. There was one day where we kind of did like a lot of deals with the weather gods. We were like, look, listen up. We kind of like called Zeus, Poseidon, whoever. We were
Wind
just
dancing, rain
yeah,
dancing.
we were like, you'd get caught in these massive sea storms, but it would be, I've never seen weather like it, where it would just pour down and it would be so bad and torrential that I wouldn't be able to see you. Like it'd be that bad. But we had this one day where I was like, listen up. All I wanted to do was to see like a big whale. I was like, I will sacrifice seeing a big whale if you just get us to Antigua without like us just getting absolutely wrecked anymore. So I was like, oh, there we go. So we're making great headway. And then one of the days, you get quite delirious because you have a real lack of sleep. Like the most sleep you get is about 2.5 hours at one point. Like that's all you get. And the night shifts are like hectic. And I remember looking in front of me and I was like, I think I just saw a whale breach, but no, I don't think that's real because you do hallucinate on the road.
Oh, he had a top hat and he was eating a biscuit. I was
He was dressed as Marlin. And I was like, no, I definitely didn't see a whale. And we were all on deck. It was really early. It was about 7 a.m., I'd say. And Maddie was like, I've just seen a whale breach. And I was like, she's the nature queen. She sees it all. So we looked over and this huge humpback whale just like fall out of the water. And I was like, in my head, I was like, oh my God, this is so special. But there was another part of my head that was like,
shit, we're not
please
going to
don't
make it
land
now.
on our
Oh, no.
boat.
Oh,
Yeah, I was
yeah.
like, please don't kill us. And I was like, do you know what? I'm really happy with just that one whale. It's amazing. But that whole day, all we saw was whales. We saw this big wave came up and it was rolling towards us, but it wasn't like a breaking wave. It was a nice wave. And in the wave, we could see 2 whales like dancing in sync through the whale and then like went under our boat. We saw a mummy whale and a baby whale sort of migrating towards sort of, I'd say like Australasia way. And the most incredible whale sighting I had was, the girls didn't see it, which I'm fuming about. But it was kind of rough seas because I always said, if there's a whale close enough, I am straight in that water and I'm swimming with the whale. But it was too rough to be like, I'm hopping in. But I was rowing and honestly, maybe about 20 meters from the boat, this huge, I don't know whether it was a blue whale. It was close enough that I could see the barnacles on its face. It came up and it like took a breath and then like you could see all of its back, its like little dorsal fin and then its tail. And I was like, I had no words. I was like, really big ass whale. And they were like, what? It's like, big ass whale. But by the time they turned around, like its little tail had just disappeared. And in my head, I was doing the maths. I was like, right, could I like unclip and then tie on and then jump in? But I was like, by the time I'm in, it's going to be gone. And then we would see humpback whales sort of like breaching all the time. And it went from being like, oh my God, to like, oh, and there's another one like, oh, well.
Another humpback
Yeah,
whale.
just another whale.
Yeah.
Saw a couple like shark fins, which was sketchy. You'd see sharks kind of like come up, ride a wave, and then disappear again. So if we ever went in to clean the bottom of the boat, because you had to clean off something called sea bogies, somebody would be on Shark Watch.
Sea bogies.
Yeah, there's like
Ugh.
this little like, it's so satisfying though. You like swim under the boat and like scrape them off with like a little ice scraper. And then they like disappear into the blue, and then all these tuna come up and eat them. And but whenever I saw tuna, I was
I
like,
assume that's to stop extra
Get away
weight
from
on
me.
the boat. Is it?
what was that?
Just that to stop extra weight on the boat.
Yeah, so actually, it does weigh the boat down, but it also creates drag, which means you lose knots.
More treacle.
Yeah, more treacle bogies.
And another completely random question, but to jump back, you've obviously said you went over Christmas and New Year. Most people wouldn't do that for the obvious reason they want to be home with. I'm assuming that you leave there because that's your best weather window.
Yeah. So
and it turned out to be completely wrong.
Well, I'd say the first 2 weeks were 100% wrong. Like they definitely pushed us in the direction. We set the record this year of like the fastest speed ever caught on a wave, which was like, I think it was something like 19 knots, which doesn't sound fast, but when you're in it, you're like, this isn't fun. But the beauty of doing that is you get the trade winds and you get a lot of marine traffic. So unfortunately this year, there was a team called Aussie Old Salts, a team from Perth, Australia, and an incredible skipper called Alistair passed away. But it was a passing boat that recovered him and his crew. Whereas if you did it sort of in the summer, you don't get much traffic, but a lot of super yachts, cargo ships pass over. But we actually had not an altercation with a cargo ship, but it was quite a stormy night, and you can see little dots on the horizon, and depending on the light formation, you can figure out how big the boat is. So you have to kind of do like a little bit of maths to figure out how big this boat is. And because my background's boats, like, and I've got a yacht master, I was like, that's a big ass boat. And Maddie was like, how big are we talking? And I was like, it's a tanker, like it's huge. So you usually, common courtesy, you call them and say, look, we don't have an engine, we don't have sails, so like, can you move out of the way of us? Because you've got like
the ability to move.
You've got the ability to do it. And like, we got nothing, radio silence, and you can see these lights getting closer. And I was just like, hello. And usually you can kind of bring up something called an AIS, which tells you the boat's name, where it's heading, who the captain is. You can be like, oh, Steve, can you move your boat, please? And you're like, roger that. And then you move. But this guy just wasn't answering, and it's getting closer and closer and closer. And I was like, we're going to have to set off a flare here. And we've got safety flares. So you've got red flares, which are like, I'm in distress, come and rescue me. And then you've got white that's like, hey, I'm here, please go away. So Grace was like so keen. She was like, should we do a parachute? I was like, no. Parachute's like, you can see it for 27 miles. Like, that will bring everyone to us. So she was like, all right, I'm going to do a handheld flare. So you've got this video where I'm on the VHF to this guy being like, anybody in the boat at all that can hear us, we have deployed a white flare, like, adjust your bearing, that. And I'm like screaming. Maddie's doing it on like the fixed, because the fixed gives you a longer range, whereas the handheld will give you what you can see. So we're both like double teaming, being like, can you see us? And Grace is just like, I have this video of her with this flare, and she's like, and she actually goes at one point on the video, and I'm like, okay,
we're gonna die.
Yeah, she's like, yeah, but make it cool. And eventually this guy comes over the radio and he's like, hello, ladies. And I'm like, oh, hiya, hun. I've been like calling you for 25 minutes. And he's like, why didn't you why didn't you sat call us? And I was like, oh my God. I was like, we can't call you because you're not showing up. We don't know who you are. To us, you are a known vessel. And he was like, yeah, I'll adjust my bearing. And he's like, maybe you should check your AIS. And I was like, oh, we can see you, but you can't see us. Okay, sure. So that was our almost run-in with a cargo ship.
Oh, yeah.
The life and adventures of Boaty McBoat Grace.
Yeah, Boaty McBoat Grace has been through it.
Literally.
Blimey.
When I talk about it, I'm like, why did I do it?
Oh man,
It's chaotic.
Yeah, there is, but incredible, really cool. So tell us now about the final laps of the journey, the final sort of the final assault on land.
Marlin free, whale free.
You survived the unusual man in
There's
the big
also
boat.
like flying fish that hit you as well. Fish that fly and torpedo
You've seen a
you.
flying fish,
I
right?
have seen a flying fish.
Cool.
Yeah, they're really cool.
They
But then
speed.
I think they're really cool because I see them from the comfort of my living room on a phone.
Yeah,
Yes,
they
with the man going,
smell.
and gently out of the water. There's nothing gently about it, Dave.
Yeah, like, there's nothing fun about this. So you can see that you're getting closer to Antigua, and you're like, your clothes are damp and your body's wrecked, and like everything hurts, and you're used to the food now that's basically just stodgy rice. Like the first week you're like, oh, this is delicious, and by the end of it you're like, I hate every single flavour of everything. You just, all I fantasized about was chicken wings. So like when I got to Antigua, oh my god,
Yeah, I was saying, not the worst place to
I
land.
know, I was like, woo. So you can see it like on the chart. You're like, I'm like so close, but you're constantly looking to see if you can see land, because all you've seen is blue and sky, and that's it. And it was maybe like 8 a.m, and I was just about to go for like my 2-hour rest shift, and I was going to the loo, but the loo is a bucket, so there's nothing graceful about it. You either like face the person or you face away and they see your ass. So you're like, okay, I'm gonna do the polite thing. I'm gonna have a chat with you while I'm having a wee. So I'm chatting away to, I think it was Grace. And I'm like, you try and pull up your shorts because everything's damp. You're like, I can't do it. And like, you know, when it's like the Ross Geller scene with the trousers,
Yes,
and you're
right.
just like, I was like, I can't do it. And I was like about to have a breakdown, and I stood up and I was like, girls, I think I can see land. And they're like, no, you can't.
I think I could see your vagina.
Yeah, I was like, no, I literally was. I think it was all out. I think I was just like, at that point, I was like, I'm just going to crawl in the cabin. Because, no, seriously, side note onto that. Everybody slept with their asses out, because you get such bad pressure sores that when you go into the cabin, you literally just air your bum, you like Savlon it, whatever cream you've got, you're just kind of like, my bum is still absolutely wrecked. I have to have like infrared masks on my cheeks because like it's destroyed. Back to land.
Sure.
So I'm stood up, and I probably am vagina out to be fair. And I was like, girls, it's land. And you're like, oh my God, we can see land. We're going to be there so soon. And then you like do the calculations and you're like, oh shit, it's still another like 3 days. You're like, oh. So you get really excited. But when I saw land, I was like, oh my gosh. Like,
did that pep the speed up a little bit at that point?
Did you re-energize you?
yeah, I think we were all kind of like a bit over the row. We were like, I know we'd settled into it and like, this is epic, but we were like, we know that our family are on the island, like a shower is on the island, like a bed. There's so many things that you think, do you know what?
Not sitting on your ass for 8 hours.
I know, yeah. And it's kind of like, you see land and you're just, it's so weird. And the closer you get, you see colours. And I remember thinking like, oh my God, a tree looks great. I was like,
green is a lovely colour.
Tree is great.
All things blue can fuck off.
Oh, 100%. I was like, I just was like, I hate the colour blue and grey. But you start getting joined by kind of like sailors that have come out for a day trip, and they're like, oh, you've got this. And you're like, how close until I land? And they're like, you're still really far away. And you're like, no, don't tell me that. And one of the guys is like, we're doing marlin hunting. And I was like, well,
Go get him.
guess what? It's like, I'll tell you about it. But no, it's the kind of, the morale towards the end is like, you kind of, there's like a sadistic part of you that's like, I don't want us to finish. But then there's a small part of you also that's like, I'm over it, I'm done. Like,
I need a shower.
I need a shower and land in a nap for 2 days.
Yeah. Wow. Oh, yeah. So, wow. So take us to you pull up onto the land. How are you feeling? That's got to be ecstasy, isn't it?
So we really wanted to have a day finish because the pictures from the day finish are like banging. They're so good. But we got in at sunset. So as we came round the headland, the sun was setting and it was lush. And a support boat comes out and it says, look, right, you've got to go to this particular buoy, and then when you hit that, you're done. Someone's going to set off a flare and it's over. Like, you don't have to row anymore. But there's kind of like a fort as you come around the headland at sort of English Harbour, and all of our family were up there, and they turned their lights on their phone on and were like waving us in, and you could hear them. But it was so overstimulating coming around the corner because it's where all the big millionaire super yachts dock. So all the lights are on, they're blowing their horns. You can hear like people screaming and clapping.
And you've heard nothing but water.
Yeah, and I was just like, what's happening? I was so overstimulated. I just was like, should we turn around, girls? Let's go back the other way. But the guys, they come out on the speedboat and they're like, right, okay, you've got at least 20 strokes, great. And you're just doing like a full send. And then you're looking over your right shoulder and waiting for that flare, because they're like, as soon as that flare goes off, you're done. And I remember rowing like to the point where like I was dripping. It's probably like the hardest I worked for the whole row. I was like, do it for the cameras. And honestly, when that flare went off, I remember just dropping the oars and being like, oh my God, it's done. It's
I
done.
never want to touch an aura
It's
ever again.
done.
That's
And then you have
incredible.
the moment where you set off the red flares and you have all the press take photos. And I remember just being like, I can't believe I've just rowed across the Atlantic. And you think you're done. You think
Jesus.
you're going to get like towed to the pontoon. They're like, okay, you just need to row a bit more. And I was like, what? I was like, no, you've said
You
when
said
the
put
flag
it
goes,
down.
we're done.
Yeah.
And I remember Maddie hand steered us and Grace tapped us in. And I was at the bow of the boat. And then you kind of come around the corner again. And on this pontoon, there were hundreds of people, like rowers that got in before you, family. And I remember scanning the whole of it for my boyfriend because he'd come over from Australia and I was like, I hadn't seen him for like 4 months. And like, he supported me the whole way through the row. And I was looking and I was just like, I spotted him. But what I had been told a couple of days prior is he'd completely shaved all of his hair off. So I was like, that is my boyfriend. But like, where's his hair gone?
Why does he look like Lex
Yeah,
Luthor?
literally. So we everyone's applauding. It's amazing. Like the race organisers on the mic, like doing like the big emceeing, and like you tie up. And this moment will live rent free in my brain for the rest of my life. So Maddie steps off first, and she's super elegant and gorgeous and lovely. But we had been sponsored by a trainer company. I wouldn't say their name. And I was like, right, I'll wear them. To be fair, these trainers brilliant. But I stepped off, and it had been raining that day. And I put one foot on that. And bearing in mind, you lose, like, you feel
You
like...
haven't walked, stood up, whatever,
and
properly, really.
your
have you?
centre of gravity, it feels like the world is trying to, like, suck you through the floor. So I step off, and I'm holding this guy's hand, and I put my right foot down, and my right foot was like, bye. It just went off in front of me. And all you could hear is all these people like, whoa. And I was like, I'm fine. And I, like, stand up, and I'm like, oh, my God, like, that's being live streamed around the world. My parents are probably like, oh, she stacked it. And all I could think, like, he's interviewing me, and you know, you have like, it was almost like beer fear, but not. I was just like, I can't believe I've just rowed for 48 days and like absolutely smashed it, and I've just stacked it at the finish line. And I was just like, oh, trainers. I was just like, ugh. And I like, after the race, I met up with Charlie and Charlie's dad, and he was like, I took a freeze frame of the trip, and I was like, I never need to see this again in my life. I was like, no. Whenever I watched it back with family after the row, they'd like, that bit would happen, and I'd be like, okay.
When did you set off?
13th of December, and we got
What year?
in 2023, and we got in January 29th or January 30th. All I remember is 48 days. 2024. So
That's crazy.
it was mega. Yeah. I just was like, poof.
And there was me debating going for another box of Quality Street at that point.
We achieved nothing in January. Yeah, you did
Zero.
all
New Year's
amazing
Eve.
things. Yeah, wow.
I would love, like, well, next on the agenda was I might look at doing the South Pole. That's also around Christmas. My mum was like, don't you bloody dare.
Yeah,
I was like,
bet.
why not? Because one of our sponsors was like, you know, if you do another massive sort of expedition, we would look to sponsor you again. And I was just like, don't tell me that because I'll do it.
Yeah. Well, that's what I was going to ask you next. So what's next for Vibe the Wave?
So I think everybody's just settling back into life, which, like, Grace actually recently ran the London Marathon. I was just like, what is
Yeah,
happening?
Grace.
With her
Yeah.
GoPro.
Yeah, the GoPro.
Yeah.
Yeah, so she did the London Marathon. Maddie's just got like straight back into the swing of work. And I just was like, I'm leaving and moving back to Australia. Ta-da. But I think in terms of adventure, I would love to do the South Pole. However, for 2 people, it's £200,000.
Whee!
And the row was probably about 150 grand in terms of personal money, sponsors, a lot of begging, a lot of like, please help me. Because it's a lot to ask people to sponsor and sort of champion something that you want to do. It's quite a selfish thing, but I think there's a lot of people that see
did
the
raise a lot.
adventure. Yes, there's a lot of people that kind of want to support you in it. Our 2 biggest sponsors didn't want anything because we were like, you know, we could do BBC News interviews, we can do press. They were like, no, we just want to support you. Like a lot of, I think with women's football at the moment and women in sport in general, a lot more. There's been a lot more engagement in kind of supporting women in sport, which is really interesting because when we started out, it was kind of like everyone was like, "No, COVID, we've been absolutely financially ruined." No, and then the World Cup with the women was so big that we found a lot of people then were like, "Do you know what, actually, one, we want to support you, and two, it looks kind of really good for us that we're like doing women in sport." But yes, I think next on the list is probably the South Pole, and my lovely boyfriend was like, "You do you, girl. Treat yourself. Like, go for it." He's always championed absolutely everything that I've done. And if I say like, I kind of want to do this, he'll be like, "Of course you do." Just like, let me know when you're doing it. Yeah. So it's wicked.
If you could go back now, start again, any of it you'd like to do different or anything you would have done? Aside from the stupid fish.
The stupid fish, yeah. We actually named her
I'm convinced
Carol.
was at the helm of the cargo ship as well. You're going to crash into.
I've got like a "you're not getting a Christmas card" list, and he's up there. I think in terms of doing anything differently, I think potentially, I think it would have been nice to be able to buy our own boat, and I think that's because when it's someone else's possession or something that somebody else has put so much love into it, you do love it more and you care for it more. But I think there was a small aspect of us that was like, even before the Marlin, we were like, this is someone else's boat and we are respecting it and we're loving it. Whereas with ours, if it was ours, it might have felt a little less stressful. But the guys who we chartered the boat from were incredible. Like they were the first people we told about the Marlin. We were like, "Happy New Year's," with us 3 holes in the boat.
Fish got excited.
We'll get it sorted. But I don't think I would do anything differently because it wouldn't.
Would you not ask for a redesign of the boat so you could actually sleep in it?
I mean, they're pretty. Rannoch have smashed it.
Is it because they're made so efficiently?
Yes.
So it means you can't.
They're made for a purpose, and you sleep in ain't it?
Yeah, they're so basic. Like there are no luxuries. The mattress is like this.
So you know the one you said you had to get in back with the coffin.
Yep.
Was there any way of getting in it and laying on your front?
You could do, but
because you obviously said you had to sleep with your ass out.
Yeah, to be fair.
So laying like this would have been horrendous.
Predominantly, that was Grace's cabin. So she's very like bendy and nimble. So she was good to kind of like move around. But if you wanted to, because I'm like such a wriggly sleeper, like I roll all the time. So if I've like just got comfortable, you'd have to kind of like untuck your leg and then kind of have to do like this weird like yoga pose and almost kind of like do a cat call and then kind of put your legs under. But then by the time you've done that, you're like, "Oh my God, I've like hit the nav station with my face and like
I'm not asleep anymore."
Yeah, or like the boat's like rocked and like stuff's fallen on you. But no, I just like, it was such an adventure.
I had a smash on the head 14 years ago.
It's very evident. It's very evident.
Yes.
And things he says.
I have not enjoyed, I do not enjoy now. I used to be fine on a boat. I now can't really go on a boat because my head's not right. I can't even get in the back of a van that moves when I can't see without my head spinning now. How the hell? Because, on a cruise ship or whatever, you can still get up and walk around.
Yeah.
You are, all of that gone. So how did you feel? Aside from stacking it, not because of the trainers that paid for your trip and whatnot, obviously. How was the next sort of... Because obviously people are trying to... and you haven't been touched either by a human being first, or talked to, really.
Yeah.
How was that? Because it's a lot to emotionally process, physically process.
Honestly, I'll be completely frank. After the row, I was in a really dark place for about a month, I'd say, and it was really common with a lot of people, but nobody kind of like talks about it because everyone's like, "Why, it's an amazing adventure." But you step off the boat and it feels like gravity is trying to pull you through the floor, and you've got all of these cameras and people like asking you questions, and you're like, "I literally just want to lay flat," and like they have like a plate of food for you, and all I wanted to do was eat like the veggies, because I was just like, I'm so used to...
I have not had veggies.
I was like, give me vegetables. But in terms of sort of post-row, I stayed in Antigua for about a week afterwards, just kind of like doing nothing.
All inclusive.
I literally was like, I was that chick that was on a sun lounger, was like, "Don't talk to me, bring me the drinks." It's just like, but when I got home, the day I got home, my family threw like a massive like we had like a fake Christmas before, and then we had everyone after over, like all my nieces, like little baby, and just it was so lovely to see everyone. But I was so overstimulated by kind of like sounds and noises and people that I just had to keep removing myself. And I was like, why am I like this? I don't get it. And I'd wake up in the middle of the night stressed out, being like, oh, my friend's safe. And you just kind of, I know the Marlins story now is funny, but I'd see pictures of Marlins on Instagram. My algorithm was Marlins, and I was like, ha ha, like it put me in such a dark place.
I totally understand that. That's it. And I suppose it's your body has been in such a state of must survive, must do this, must get through this, must do this.
You're adapted to this.
You've slipped into a sort of survival mentality, just biologically, and then had to stay in that, and that must take time to decompress out of.
It was so peculiar because everybody wanted to talk about the row, but I was so kind of like, it was almost like shell shocked from it that I was like, I don't want to talk about it, because the fleet itself is like a family. And when Alistair passed away, I was like a wreck for a few days, and it's kind of you don't expect anyone to die because you're like, oh, it's a race, no one's ever died before, blah, blah. And then when you get told, you're like, oh my god, like, and it kind of puts into perspective, one, how crazy what we did was, and two, like, there's a family now that don't have that person because they chose to row across an ocean. And my mum and dad were so supportive the whole way across, and my dad is a man of many, like not many words. And apparently, as we came into Antigua, they were like watching us on YouTube. Like, he apparently just burst into tears. And I was like, stop! Like, don't cry with me. But it took me some time, and I spoke to a couple previous rowers, and I was like, how did you find it afterwards? Because you kind of spend 2 years pouring your life and your soul into it. And before we went on the race organizer was like, this is going to ask everything of you. It's going to strip you like to your most basic like fibers of who you are, and it's going to take you to some of the most hectic places. And then post row, you come off and you're like, wow, I did that. And then it's just like, right, you've done it, like move on. And it's hard, like, because a lot of people go back into work and they're kind of used to like this massive adventurous life, and then you're like back at a computer, just like, oh.
Well, you spent years planning for it, training for it, doing all that. But then half a year doing it. Yeah. And then you just get to stand up, everything's heavy, and your ass is on fire.
Literally. It's still so bad. Like,
And you've got fish phobia.
Honestly, like, this is another reason I know I'm going to marry my boyfriend. When we got back to the hotel, I was like, look, I am going to show you my ass right now. And it's pretty bad. I need you to be honest. Like, I don't want any fluffy, like, oh, no, you look great, hun. I was like, tell me the truth. And I like did the slow reveal, and he was like, oh my God, it's so bad. He was like, it's horrific. So I love him. He got in the shower with me and exfoliated my arse cheeks. And literally, he then bio-oiled my bum for about a week. And even now,
touched this for 6 months.
Even now, I'll be like, can you please put scar cream on my bum? And he's like, this row is asked a lot of you, but it's also asked a lot of me.
He's so selfless.
Yeah, he's like, I am the best. But no, I think, I just, every now, do you know, it was really funny actually. I watched Blue Planet with David Attenborough. You know, they do the slow like turn of the globe at the beginning, and they're like, this is Blue Planet. It like shows the Atlantic, and I'm like, that's like a quarter of the earth that I've rowed across.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I'm like, I would highly recommend anyone to do it. Like, if you've got kind of the stamina and the mental ability to do it, you should do it.
I looked at Kev CV. I haven't got it.
I just about survived a 14-hour flight across it. That nearly did me in.
Well, listen, I think what he did is excellent, and you are what worked out really well.
It's
is
inspiring
that
to the next bunch.
It really is, and you are such a good communicator as well. It really landed on their feet with you being such a good proponent and communicator of the sport and the actual.
And big love to Maddie and all her happiness in life.
Yeah, Maddie and Grace.
Sounds like fun.
Maddie and Grace, and the whole Vibe the Wave team. We just it's really
because
great.
I'm a Grace. I am a.
You're a Grace.
Brutal, honest, and to the point. And you need that person, don't you?
You really got a sense of the characters. You were really engrossed in the characters of the story, weren't you, Kevin? You need
that. You need that. You can't all be miserable.
Yeah.
You need someone
Everyone
who's
had like different. So Grace, real straight talking, but an absolute cracker of a person. And Maddie was just always constantly like positive and happy. She was the skipper because she was kind of like, she just was always happy. And she is an incredible rower. She's done like river rowing. Me and Grace have never done rowing before. We were like, well, just see what happens. Like, give it a go.
Wow.
Grace had done maybe like one session on the water prior to us getting the boat. So I just feel like that's the other thing. You don't need to be a rower to do this. Like, there's so many hardcore rowers that are like, oh, I row at Henley, all of this stuff. And I'm just like, I hate river rowing. But you can still do it. It just goes to show, like, don't let anyone ever tell you you can't do something, because you can.
Actually, Kev, we were a small part of that journey, you and I, because there was a small, they played a sample of the Steve Cayley Show podcast.
I do remember that you getting
yeah, so it's a video.
Maddie was on deck with a coffee, embracing it.
Excellent.
It was a lovely sunny day.
Yeah, so we were there with you
that
in
was
spirit.
pre-Marlin, I assume.
Yes. We were listening to Prisoner of Azkaban when the Marlin struck.
Stephen Fry version?
Yes.
Yeah,
it's my least favourite film, not because of the Marlin, it's always been my least favourite of the Harry Potters. So when we were listening to it and it happened, I was like, see, I told you, Azkaban. Not
Bad juju.
Yeah.
I remember Azkaban, the film I liked, because we were just about old enough to start fancying Hermione, and we were all of an age. Yeah, and then,
I have never been old enough to fancy Hermione.
Yeah, but
because it's always been very illegal.
Yeah, you're very old. You're very old. I was a sort of similar age, but yeah. So I just firstly thank you for telling us that story.
That's okay.
It's really nice. The point of the podcast is to learn each week. We sort of swap facts and we try and educate ourselves, and every now and then we try and collect these sort of brilliant stories. And you're great at telling
all of it is cool. I just love the fact that you didn't row beforehand.
I was like,
I'm going to row. Where to? The other side of the planet.
It's like saying, I'm going to do the London Marathon, but I hate running.
Yeah, see,
I'm going to walk it.
I would just never do the marathon.
Never.
No.
Well, I just think it's
running is a ridiculous idea.
Yeah, I just think it's incredible because it takes fortitude and courage and determination, and so I think
it doesn't matter how physically strong you are if your mind's not in it. I would imagine a lot of people turn back, get whatever because their brain just goes. And
I'd rather
staring at blue and blue.
I'd rather do that. I'd rather row another ocean than do a marathon. 100%.
Well, I think, Kev, is there anything else you want to know before we put a little bow on it?
No.
Sure?
Yeah.
Nice.
I'm just trying to, for the last 5 minutes, I've been trying not to laugh because I can see the thumbnails now you're going to create for TikTok of Grace and a Marlin and some other fucking nonsense.
Oh, yes, we'll play around. Yeah, that's right.
So I apologise ahead of time.
No, that's okay.
It's
Don't
coming.
worry.
But yes, I take creative liberties.
I've said
I take
so much through. I'm like, have it all.
But Grace, thank you so much for being on the Steve Cayley
Thanks so
show.
much for having me.
Yeah, I think you're brilliant. And where can people find you on the interwebs?
So you can find us on @vibethewave_ on Instagram, and our website is www.vibethewave. It should be .co.uk. It might be com. We're pretty much big on the gram. That's our. We don't have TikTok.
On the gram.
We don't really do Facebook, but we do dabble in LinkedIn.
Yeah.
For all you business honeys out there.
Yeah. That's it.
But mostly like Instagram, like it's monitored by.
You're going to go to the South Pole, you best get your ass on LinkedIn.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Kevin, thank you so much for joining me. Oh, one thing out there that would have really moved you along is a good set of. Actually, probably would have.
Well, if they had a door,
probably would have been a
fish
burden.
wouldn't have come through the boat.
Well, probably would have been a burden to have 4 additional windows and doors in there for no reason. Hey, say you're in the middle of the ocean, or wherever you are on the globe, you find yourself suddenly in need of 4 windows and doors. Why do I always say 4 windows and doors? You find yourself suddenly in need of new windows and doors, then get yourself to grahamswindowsanddoors.co.uk. grahamswindowsanddoors.co.uk are the finest purveyor of windows, doors and conservatories in the Oval and the surrounding areas. So get yourself to grahamswindowsanddoors.co.uk. Grace, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. Kevin, thanks so much for all you do. You're very good today. Very good podcasting from you. Yeah, it's really
because
good
I shut up
question.
and let you do it.
No, you did. You asked some good
cheers,
questions. questions. Yeah, you sort of carried it, if anything. So good work. Listener, if you enjoyed this, then please consider clicking the follow button on Spotify, leaving us a review. Those things really help propel us up the podcasting charts and get us to where we need to be.
Go to Instagram, Vibe the Wave.
And go to Vibe the Wave on Instagram, Vibe the Wave _ on Instagram. And I'm on there somewhere. Where am I? Steve Kaler Show. You can find us at the Steve Kaler Show.
Oh, yeah. There's
Kev's
us.
on there too. So, yeah.
And Graham's Windows and Doors are on there too, I think.
Oh, we're all on there. We can't move for us people on Instagram. So thank you for listening. We really appreciate it. And we will see you next week. Bye.
Ta-ta for now.
Hiya, you're right. Hi, everyone.